Hello everyone, I've been away for a pretty long time now from YouTube, so I'm back now to discuss Evergrey's newest album, Escape of the Phoenix. Now I have only gotten into Evergrey recently, so probably 2020. I didn't know of them before that, when The Storm Within was actually the newest album. I heard passing through. Thought that was a great track, but then when listening to the album I thought Tom's voice was a bit pretentious, he was a bit up himself. Was this the voice that he kind of gave across to me at that time? And then there were some melodic tracks which I was just like, don't care for this, don't have the time for it. Some songs miss solos, thought that's rubbish. So I passed it and just didn't bother with it. And then something kind of got me back in to look at them. I heard The Atlantic, thought that was great, got back into The Storm Within, thought that was actually really good, what the hell was I thinking? And then I started really getting into the band, and I've listened to all the albums all the way down to The Inner Circle, and I haven't gone past that yet. I listened to the album so much that I actually got sick of listening to the band, because I just kept listening to all the albums every single day, multiple times a day, and I just got sick of hearing Evergrey. But how do I really feel about it? Since AFM Records, I think Evergrey has been consistently putting out great albums. Hymns for the Broken, the production was fantastic, especially the albums before that were pretty crap in production. So Hymns for the Broken, the production was solid, it was a solid album. Storm Within had some differences, but again solid. The Atlantic, again some slight changes, but again a very solid album. Now the three albums are kind of consistent for me. They're all three of them are kind of just as good as each other, but for different reasons, because each album does do something differently and then something worse at the same time. But they're all very consistent. So now we've got the newest album, Escape of the Phoenix, that came out last Friday. I've seen people reviewing it, giving it 10s out of 10s, 9.5s, but I find that with most reviewers, unless an album is incredibly crap, reviewers just always go for the highest of scores, and whenever they talk about it, all they do is talk about the vocalist, if the music is actually played, because that's all that really matters. Actual techniques and talents and solos and things aren't important. Just as long as there's a beat, you like pop music, because that's where metal's going these days. And the vocalist is pretty decent with some decent enough lyrics. And if they do that and the structure is basic enough, 10 out of 10. I am not like that. If a band makes a mistake, I will tell you. If a band does something wrong, I will tell you. I do not fanboy out. I listen to an album, I dissect it, I rip everything apart and distinguish everything separately. If something's missing, I'll say so. If something's bad, I'll say so. If something's good, I will tell you. I do not fanboy out. I do not give praise just because it's Evergrey, just because there's a big fan base. I do not convey to the masses. I will tell you exactly what I think, and I will tell you exactly what is not in the album and what works and what doesn't, unlike mostly every other reviewer. As I say, I like Evergrey. I like their sound. I really like Tom's voice. I like the fact that there is two guitarists. I like the emotion that they put into it, and I like the fact that every album is different. I even like the albums that people don't like. Monday Morning Apocalypse, yes, it's very basic, and it is one of the worst, but I appreciate it for what it is, and the fact that it is different. So, let's not waste time, let's get into the actual album, Escape of the Phoenix. People are adoring this album, some people saying it's the best. What do I say? I say no. It is again pretty much just on line with the other three, if not maybe even worse. So why is that? Now the album is very heavy and aggressive and very bass driven. A lot of people would probably like this. And this is basically just down to personal preference and opinion. Some people like melodies and other people like heaviness. There is certain different types of heaviness as well that people have preferences on. Some people like a heaviness which is clear and crisp, and other people like a heaviness which is incredibly filled to the brim with bass. The album also has a lot of slower, more kind of melodic pianist parts. And then some people like parts where there's melody and piano, and other people find it just incredibly awful, and all metal should be is just guitar and brutality. Again, all of this is personal preference. I have my own personal preference, and I have reasons for my personal preference. So I will give my opinion as to why I believe things are wrong and why I believe things are right. It doesn't mean this is right or wrong. Again, as I say, this is my opinion, and I have opinions on why this is my opinion. So when it comes to Escape of the Phoenix, I have said it's basically on par with the other three, if not kind of worse. And people will say, why is that? There is a consistent thing with this album which I have a big problem with, and that is the tone. So a lot of people are enjoying the heaviness, and technically I also like it. I like the heaviness, and I also like the fact that there's melody in this. The problem I had with The Atlantic is basically that the majority of that album was all very consistent. It was all pretty heavy. I preferred the previous album, The Storm Within, maybe my favourite album by Evergrey actually, because there is diversity to it. There is upbeat stuff, there is very slow tempo stuff, there is piano stuff, there is more grand progressive tracks, there's more straightforward tracks. It's a very diverse album. The Atlantic did not have that. Escape of the Phoenix also actually has what The Storm Within has, which is, as I said, maybe my favourite, depends. Because you have slow tracks, you have more upbeat tracks, you have tracks which have some slightly more progressive elements and something more straightforward. You have ones that mix heavy and melodic, or pure just melody based. But I don't like it. Now that kind of sounds weird and like I'm contradicting myself, but again it comes back to the thing I said, which is tone. The tone of this album is atrocious. Now, as I said, I like the heaviness, but there is ways to do heaviness, which I've mentioned, and I'm coming back round to that. With this album, the tuning has changed throughout. Tom England actually said that the tuning of this album has dropped to G. Something they haven't done on the previous albums. This is a first. Now, I would say that this was a mistake. So, for people who don't know, standard tuning on a guitar is E. That's the standard. Then you've got drop D. Then you got drop C. And then you got drop A, which is what Evergrey apparently usually play in, which is incredibly dropped still. And then you go to drop G. So that is amazingly dropped from what the standard tuning is, which makes the guitar sound very, very dull, very bassy, and very, very, very thick. If a string is incredibly tight, it's gonna ring out very sharply. It's gonna be very clear and sharp. If a string has a lot of give to it, and you then fret it, you can imagine the amount of shake and wiggle that string's gonna have. It's not gonna be very tight and sharp. It's gonna be loose and thick, which is what drop G does. It makes the string incredibly shaky and loose, and that causes the issue for the majority of this album. If you have a song where you want to give an emotion to it and give an identity to it, and you've got something dropped so drastically, and then you're trying to go from one song which is anger to another song which is sadness, and the song is so, and the tuning is so thick, so bass driven, that everything kind of blends together and melds together, and it loses the articulation, and you can't really get warmth to it. So even changing your foot pedals, the amp settings, it's still difficult to kind of cut uh, things through something so bass heavy. It's harder to do something like that. So it's basically hard for bass to kind of show melody and grace. If a bass does a solo, think of a melodic solo that has great beauty to it. And if you play it through guitar and then you play it through bass, the guitar is gonna sound richer and nicer because of the tuning and the strings and everything else. As for the bass, is gonna sound worse. It's not gonna sound as beautiful or rich or organic because it doesn't have tone to it because of how thick the sound is. And that is your issue with Escape of the Phoenix. Forever Outside of the first track is a very fast-paced track, and because of it, it means that everything picked by the guitarist is so close and grouped together. But if you have a very thick sound, and I go dun-dun, the first duh is reverberating that bass. It just expands out. It's not tight and constricted, it expands and it keeps going outwards. So when you come to the next pick, that then hits and then expands, but then it starts expanding into each other, so things overlap and things get muddied and disappears. Plus you still have the bass in this, which is then also putting out bass, and the reverberation, which is just expanding constantly. So your bass is getting drowned out, your guitar is getting drowned out, and everything is just reverbing within each other and just losing its articulation. So it's hard when a song really gets going. So I think the fastest paced track on Escape of the Phoenix is the actual title track, Escape of the Phoenix. If you listen to that intro and just how fast and aggressive it is, and try and just listen to the articulation, the richness, the warmth of it, you'll be kind of hard pressed to actually kind of find it. Now if you focus and you got a really good ear for it, you will probably be able to figure out what is being heard. I can, even though I'm complaining about it, you can still hear what they are doing. It's just, it's a little tricky. And that, as I said, that's not the only issue. The issue is the fact that you lose the emotion, you lose personality to it. When it's that bass heavy, you lose the essence of the song, you lose that personality. It's just lost. Articulation gone, personality gone, warmth gone, emotion gone. Everything's gone. All that is left is a really, really cold husk. And this goes on for every single track. Now every track is going to have different meanings to them, different emotions that need to be conveyed. And the fact is the guitars are going to really struggle to get this across when the bass is so upfront. Because if you go for In the Absence of the Sun, there's something more melodic based. When the guitars really get into it and they're thumping it out, it still gives off the same kind of feel of what something really heavy like Escape of the Phoenix gives off. The pacing is changed, so the tempo is different. So one's faster than the other. Escape of the Phoenix has a faster pace than In the Absence of Sun, so that will give an idea to it. But as for the actual tone of the guitar, you are completely lost. The only thing giving you personality is Tom's voice, the keys, as well as tempo. As far as guitars go, you are lost. The guitars give fuck all in the way of expression, and I have a problem with it. I'm not going to slant the band really badly for trying something new. Every band should do something new. It's another reason why I said I like Evergrey. I like the fact that every album does change. I don't want the same thing, but I do believe that the tuning is off. So if you were to listen to a track again and just take what the riff is doing and then try and imagine what it would be in a higher tuning, they don't have to play anything different, just play the same thing but in a higher tuning, therefore some warmth and melody comes back into it. It will still maintain the heaviness, the tempo, the pacing. It will all still be there, but everything will be more articulate and richer and warmer, and I just think that would just add to the sound. Each song will then be able to give off a better feel to it, a better understanding of what the song is going for emotionally, instead of just everything is just dark and kind kind of emotionless. I just find it to be a big problem. As I say, Forever Outside It is very, very fast-paced and very, very heavy, which a lot of people are going to like, because people just like heavy bass these days, and as I say, I do like it myself. I just don't like the tone that they're going for. When it gets to the chorus, it does kind of help, and the reason why it helps is the fact that because it being the chorus, the music kind of opens up, so things aren't as grouped together and tight, therefore, you know, doing the overlapping thing. Because it's more open, it gives things more time to breathe, which is sorely needed. Also, one of the guitarists then goes and does a lead kind of section, and because of that, it just basically means that it's in the forefront, therefore it's more distinguishable, and therefore, because it's also a lead in also, it adds musicality to it. It's in the forefront, therefore it's clearer, it's sharper, and because it's doing a lead that then incorporates melody, so it's not just doing the kind of chord and things. And then with Tom's voice giving melody to it, it really does kind of enhance it. The rhythm still is very thick and really kind of holding it back. Just imagine if that rhythm section was just a bit cleaner and warmer along with that lead and tom. It would really help. I swear it would. I don't think I'm far off on this. Where August Mourns, it's a kind of slower tempo. You got a verse which is piano based. Stories, you go on even more melodic with this one, with the song starting out right with piano. It sounds nice. The pianos don't really do much change here, so Tom has to kind of bring that in, because it does kind of go on for a fair amount of time and it starts getting a bit repetitive. It's like, oh, this is just the piano going and going and going. It's not doing anything new and interesting. The voice is just doing the same thing. It's got the same vocal melody. So luckily towards the end of the verse, Tom does throw in different vocal melodies and everything, and that does kind of enhance it until you get into your chorus, which actually goes heavy again. So you got a split between the two, which I really like. I also like the fact that Where August Mourns has the split between heavy, piano, heavy, and back and forth. So going through these songs, obviously Forever Outside is very heavy, Where August Mourns brings a bit more melody into it, and then Stories brings a fair bit more melody into it. So I like how it just consistently is just descending more into melodies until it brings it back up again. A Dandelion cipher brings the keys more to the up front, which I think kind of helps. It gives this album kind of an identity. The keys aren't as upfront as I think they have been in previous albums. Obviously, Passing Through has keys really in the upfront, and I really like that track specifically for it. But the keys are just so important in this, because, as I say, what the guitars do wrong. So when the keys come forward, it just gives something more kind of richer and some more melody to it, instead of just so thick, bass-heavy aggression. So the fact that Dandelion Cypher, the keys are more in the upfront, including the chorus as well, I really like it for that reason. It's a pretty decent chorus as well. So going into your next track, The Beholder, James LaBrie of Dream Theater, the leading band of progressive metal, a band a lot of people in the metal community adore, including obviously the vocalist James LaBrie. This is the worst track on the album, and James LaBrie doesn't help. So the problem I have with this track is the fact that it's kind of slow paced. It's not really doing much new for the album. I wouldn't really be able to tell you what this song has as its signature piece that separates it from the previous tracks. It doesn't really have one. There's nothing really exciting about it. So the song just kind of goes along slowly, not introducing us to something new, something different. And then James LaBrie comes in, and obviously he sings, and he clearly sounds different to Tom, but what is the purpose here? Why is Tom James LaBrie here? I don't know. Is there a point to him? Does he bring something to the table? I personally think that James is just in this song just because he's James LaBrie and he is from Dream Theater. I don't think the story really asks much for him. There's no reason for him to be here. It's not needed. It doesn't bring anything vitally different either. As I say, James does sound different to Tom, but they're both male vocals, and they both kind of are kind of similar, especially when they harmonise together. It's just like, I don't really need James here through the harmonisation. It would work perfectly fine if it was just Tom. James isn't really adding anything here. It's not like, wow, James really is adding to this. It's on a whole new dimension now. No. And there's no solo in this. I love guitar solos, and I need them in every track. So the fact that this is basically just a very typical structured song that doesn't really have an identity signature about it to separate it from the previous track and give something new, it's therefore bland. And James doesn't add anything really to it. I don't know if they got rid of the solo because they thought James brought something forward and then thought it wasn't needed, but I've disagreed to that. He doesn't bring a thing. He's not needed. If it was a female voice, or a voice which is incredibly vitally different, like, you know, Matt Shadow's Van Sample, that is a very unique signature voice, and something like that. To bring a whole new, you know, just something really new, something fresh, a whole new dimension, that could therefore work. But James doesn't bring a new dimension. He just brings just the rest of the song. He just takes over lyrics. That's it. He just starts singing. He's not bringing something new, something interesting, a new dimension, nothing. So I find him pointless. The lack of the solo hurts the track. The lack of something special that separates the track from the others and gives it a unique feature where it's like, oh, you listen to the Beholder for this in particular, it doesn't have that. So, worst track. In the Absence of Sun, I really like this track because it has progressive elements to it. The song keeps progressing, it keeps growing. It doesn't go and then eventually it gets to a point where it just absolutely skyrockets to something brand new. What the song kind of does is, as it progresses, the song kind of flexes, it tenses its muscles, and just, as I say, it flexes its muscles. So you get these little inclines of change, of changing the kind of tempo, the pacing, add a little teeny thing as the song just kind of evolves, and it just flexes and it keeps going and progressing. And I just really like that, the fact that the song doesn't retread its steps and it doesn't just go completely off the rails on one. It remains consistent, but it keeps growing and keeps doing something new. I really like that. Eternal Nocturnal, my favourite track, and that is basically for the reason of the fact that it's up-tempo, and with all the bass and the broodingness and the darkness of the bass, and how it's so unemotionally cold and lacks identity and anything, the fact that it's more upbeat, it's more fun. When you got so much bass, you're really lacking fun and energy, because there isn't any to bass. There's not a great energy to it. It's just heavy and bass driven. So because of this, in Eternal Nocturnal, the fast pace, the upbeatness, Tom's vocals going along with it, and then single notes where he just goes to one of them high whispered notes, so beautifully done. And then again, coming into the chorus, the keys really come far into the forefront, giving it great melody. That says something the album sorely misses: melody. It's so terrible melody that is missing because of this stupid drop tuning that the band goes for. And then the other big thing, the fact that the solos are phenomenal. Escape of the Phoenix is the most fastest, probably most aggressive song on the album. And for certain reasons, that's great, and I really, really, really like it. If the tone was different, to add something that sounds a bit more pleasing to my ears, it would really, really help that track. And the track would be pretty good for it, but because of the tone, it kind of hurts this track here. You From You, another melodic track, kind of like Stories, but I think You From You is basically what Stories should have been. You From You, I think, has a better verse. I think the chorus is better. Tom's voice just has much more of a flow to it, something that sounds much nicer and richer and better. I really like it. The solo again is probably the second best solo of the whole album. Leading Saints, another heavy track. It sounds pretty good. The last track, Run, again just kind of continuing what came previously, not really going outside the fold, which is weird. This is the last track. It's like, what are you going to end on? Is it going to be something special? Are you going to up the ante? But it's like, no, it's more of the same. And I also don't really get a solo from this unless I've really missed something. So your last song doesn't have a solo, doesn't do anything new, doesn't up the ante, there's no real high energy to it, so yeah. And that's how it ends. So I've missed certain things out to explain them in their own little sections. So overall, the album is fairly decent. Tom's voice, as per usual, is absolutely phenomenal. The amount of emotion he puts into his voice is incredible. Certain notes, which I always enjoy it when he does, where he will just go into a higher note just at the perfect kind of section. It's like it adds billions. It just really adds. In the absence of Sun, near the end of the chorus, Tom's voice, just the melody and how the music is under him is so impactful. Just go into the absence of Sun and go to the ending of the chorus to just hear it, and you will agree that it's just phenomenal. Just his voice as well as the music. It's just such a nice melody run that the band does together. As I say, Dandelion Cypher, the keys really bring that song out. Eternal Nocturnal really, again, brings it out. As well as the solo being phenomenal, as well as You From You. As I said, as I've obviously explained, each track is different. Forever Outsider is aggressive, where August Mourns, you got your piano verse. Stories more piano based. Dandelion Cypher, the keys come more to the forefront. In the absence of Sun, it's a bit more progressive. Eternal Nocturnal has a higher energy to it. Escape of the Phoenix is very aggressive. You From You is soft. So there is variation. But as I said, the tone kind of ruins it. Now, the thing I've overlooked so far is the solo. The solo's kind of disappointing. Now, a lot of people are probably going to hate me for it, because a lot of people say that the guitarists of this band, they are so amazing, they are so gifted, and they are so talented. Now, I would agree. It's just the fact that they just don't approach and lay out their solos very well. So, look at Forever Outsider, where August Mourns. The solos barely last. When you get a solo of something like 10 seconds, how much can you really get across? Can you really kind of get across your kind of point and your explanation? Can you really get something across? It doesn't tell me anything. If a solo's 10 seconds, how can it? It can't really tell me that it's what it's feeling, the emotion, the journey, and how it ends. A solo is supposed to tell a story. That's a solo that works. A solo that has an emotion to it, and it goes through its emotions, how it starts, the upraising of the emotions, just how it's absolutely overflowing, and then it can end on a whimper, or something that starts with a whimper but then just explodes into melodies or something that tells a story, something that grows, something that you can feel, you can connect with, instead of just, I've got 10 seconds, I'm going to do some shred and then fuck off. It's hard to connect with, it's hard to kind of emotionally connect with something that, again, is cold. Another issue with the solos, they're all cold. Forever Outsider is mostly kind of technically based, flashy, barely lasts, and I kind of missed the point. What is this solo telling me? It's basically just there just for the fact of flash. It's not got a purpose, it's not got a reason, it's not got anything to tell. It's just there because that's where the solo's gonna be, and he's just shredding because why the hell not? And for a one-off track, that wouldn't be that bad. Like, one track just to show off how technical you are can be enjoyable, but the fact that it lasts 10 seconds or so isn't great. And we're all just mourn the following track. It does the same thing. A solo that barely lasts and goes for fairly technical. It's cold. I don't get emotion. There's no hold. There's no swell. There's no build. There's no explosion. There's nothing of that. You get a pretty fast rhythmic section sometimes in these solos, but for the majority it's all just shreds. And not really very well placed shreds. It's not shred that tells you anything. It's very difficult to do shred that actually kind of conveys an emotion. But this band really does not do it. Stories, on the other hand, is a bit of a different story. I didn't mean to do that, but good how that turned out. Now, Stories, I don't know who does the solo for this, but I would bet that it's Tom. So, given a bit of context to Tom. Now, Tom has said that when it comes to music, he always writes songs that are personal to him, something personal. He wouldn't do a power metal typical lyrical song, something about dragons. It's just not him. He likes to get emotion across, something that you feel. And he's done a class, so when he was on tour he did like human behaviour or something like that, something about emotions. So the fact that he does that, and he always writes about emotion, and he sings with great emotion, when it comes to his solos are usually emotionally based, something slow, something more kind of given to like blues context. So that's what Stories does. Stories is actually slow. It's quiet. It's, you know, careful with where it places its notes. Instead of just going 10 to the dozen, it's like, we'll place here and place here. Be very careful and calculated with where you place it. So it kind of starts, it's soft, it's quiet, and it's like, okay, here we go, this sounds nice. And then it starts to, it has a section, and if you listen to it, you'll know where the section is, where you believe like it's building into something. It's starting to express itself more. It's starting to really just pour the emotion out, and Tom stops. It's like the solo never really started. I love solos like this. I really like them. I would prefer a solo like this over Flash any day. So it pisses me off that Tom has come in with something that could have been brilliant. And that's the solo for Stories. What could have been and what was missed because Tom decided to pack it in. A Dandelion Cypher, again, just back to flashy, as there's not much of a kind of expression, emotion to it. The Beholder, there's just nothing there. which is dumb. The absence of sun, again, decent solo, doesn't really last that long. Eternal Nocturnal, like, what the hell happened here? The solo starts with Tom and it goes on for a long time. His entire section is the length of a decent length solo. It's all you need, and it would be a perfectly fine length. But the fact is, the other guy comes in immediately after him and does a solo towards the same length. So you've got two solos that by themselves is the proper length solo, and they've got two of them back to back, making an incredibly long ass solo from two different people, meaning it has the emotion and abilities of Tom and then the expression of Tom. Then the other guy will have his own emotion and expression put in, so you get two very different sounding solos from two different personalities. And because they go on longer, it tells you more. Both of them are kind of flash based again, which is annoying, but because it goes on longer, it does give you a kind of emotion and a rhythm to it. And there are, in small teeny sections, some holds where it just escalates the sound and just gives you a nice melody to hold on to. It gives expression, it tells a story, it gives warmth and melody because of its length, and because the length, it has to do more than just the one thing unless you're a really dumb guitarist otherwise. And because of all of that, this works. Escape of the Phoenix. The solo is kinda different from the others. There is a lot of whammy being used in this solo. So it gives a whole new kind of vibe and feel to it, so the Escape the Phoenix solo is good for these reasons, but again, it's short. If he opened it up and made the track long with all the whammy and just how different sounding this is to the previous solos, and he went somewhere with this idea, it could have been really interesting, but no. Now You From You. As I said, what stories should have been? It's basically just the better track of stories, because the whole track is better, including the solo. Because as I said, the solo, it never goes anywhere, but from You From You, it's a blues solo that goes on for a long time. Therefore, you get what you want. You get the emotion, it stays with you, you have time to get invested into it, lose yourself into it, instead of, okay, this is what it's going for, I'm going to get comfortable into this, and then they just stop it before you can do that. You can get into this, you can sink into it, you can get comfortable with it, you can feel it and understand it, and it's great. Leading Saints, just short and flashy again. Run doesn't do bloody anything, and that's how they end the album on. So, the guitars in this album, you can safely say, are pretty abysmal. The tone is awful. The amount of bass on this album is awful. The tuning is ridiculously silly. You do not ever need to tune to a drop G, ever. It's not needed. You can get across that feeling and emotion without getting rid of emotion from the sound of your instrument. It's just cold, it's empty, void. If you listen to Escape of the Phoenix and you go back to The Atlantic or The Storm Within or Hymns of the Broken, you can easily say that there is more emotion, more warmth and richness in all of them albums, every album prior to Escape of the Phoenix. Even though you know that Escape of the Phoenix is supposed to have melody to it. It's supposed to be melodic with emotion in there. It's what evergrey always do. Evergrey is always about emotion, and I love evergrey for it. And Escape of the Phoenix has it, but because of this tuning, it's missing. It's only there in little teeny bits. As I said, the keys and the vocals And if you just try and understand the guitars and just take away the silly tuning that it has, the Atlantic Storm Within, Hymns of the Broken, all have more emotion to them because the tuning is cleaner, because there's more warmth to the guitars. Therefore, the tracks of Escape of the Phoenix could all sound so much better if they changed the tuning and not have it so bass heavy. The solos, again, are kind of abysmal. They recorded this album in COVID, so the guys who, when they go to play the solos, they're not in the room, they're not doing multitude of things. Just, I'm sending you the song, get an understanding of it, get a feeling for it, and then put your solo in for however long in this section, and then it's their time to then sit and go, okay, this is my part, this is my solo section, think about it, write something out, do something, lay something out. Every track they get is just like, okay, here we want you to put a solo in, it's like, here you go, and then they just send it off, and they just go do something better, because there's better they can do with their time than bloody Evergrey, because, well, why would you bother? You would think they would put more effort in, surely, because it's like, they're sat down, they're by themselves, they're not in there all contributing, so it's like, you're by yourself, so you want to put more into it, you want to contribute. And I just kind of feel like they just really got kind of lazy when it came to the solos. And it's just ridiculous that they have Eternal Nocturnal and You From You, two fantastic solos, one incredibly long and blues filled with emotion and things, and then Eternal Nocturnal, two back to back, two different people, two different personalities, super long. How can they think that, I think people would prefer the solo out of Where August Mourns. I think Stories has a better solo than You From You. Who would think that? Why do you think someone would think that? You would expect the band knows that You From You and Eternal Nocturnal are the two best solos, because they are. If they do it, why did they not do it for the others? They must have known. They must have known. And that irritates me. The fact that they know. The fact that they know better. The fact that they've gone and actually done what I want, and then just completely ignored it for everything else. It's dumb. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. Now, I've only reviewed the one album of Evergrey, which was The Storm Within, which I gave an 8.5, and as I say, may be my favourite because it's got more kind of emotion and diversity to it than others, and I just really like it. But again, it kind of depends from time to time, because as I say, Hymns from the Broken and the Atlantic are kind of similar to The Storm Within. But Escape of the Phoenix, I would give an... oh dear God, what would I give Escape of the Phoenix? I do like it. I do like that each track is kind of different. I like Tom's voice. I like that they do have solos. I'm not happy with the solos I get, but I would rather they be there than not, even though I don't know what their purpose is, because there's no emotion or anything behind them. Eternal Nocturnals and You From You solos are absolutely brilliant. So I do like the album. But the album for me is probably somewhere around 7.8 to 8. Like, it's still a very good album, if not kinda great. But it's not really, you know, great. It's not amazing. It's not an amazing album. It's not fantastic. Nowhere close. It's not amazing. It's not fantastic. It's not brilliant. It's just a really good album. Like, it's a good album. It's solid. But they have problems. They need to commit to their solos. They need to put more in. Tom gives something so different to what the other guitarist does when it comes to solos, because Tom is the emotional player compared to the other guy. The tuning, you just need to tune up and just maybe put more leads through the song just to give more melodies to it, in line and vein of the emotion that the track goes for. Just putting a lead in isn't going to destroy it. If you know what you're doing, you can still put the lead in that still contributes to the rhythm and the idea and the sound and emotion of the track, but it gives more melody to it. These are the only things you really need to do. Just commit more to these solos from Tom and the other guy. Make them longer. Use both of you more often. That would fix that. Tune up the guitars. That would fix that. And then just put more leads through the songs. You would have a fantastic album. So, that's it from me. See you in the next one, guys.